What is going on, everyone? I'm Des with DesFit, and today we're going to take an in-depth look at the Fitbit Ionic, specifically focusing on the fitness features of Fitbit's high-end fitness wearable. That was a lot of fits. Now, if you're new to the channel, welcome, and it's great to have you, but just to give you a little bit of insight into how I do my reviews, I try to provide a pretty good amount of detail, and hopefully I won't bore you at the same time. I've done some extensive reviews on the Apple Watch Series 3, the Samsung Gear Sport, plenty of Garmin's, including the Vivo Active 3, so if you haven't seen those already, definitely check those out and subscribe to the channel for lots of fitness tech reviews. So with that out of the way, let's take a look at the Ionic, at least on the outside, before we dive inside to take a look at the fitness features. The Ionic is one of the more unique designs you'll find, going for a futuristic look with sleek, straight lines all over. They used a process called nanomolding to create a seamless design from the aluminum body to the Gorilla Glass display, and they carried this theme all the way to the removable watch straps. Initially, I thought that the squared off edges would be kind of sharp and a little uncomfortable, but each edge is nice and smooth, and I'm not necessarily a fan of square watches, but I found this to be quite attractive. Wearing the Ionic is very comfortable, and it's also very lightweight, but the Ionic isn't exactly a small watch. I have a pretty average sized male wrist and it fits nearly perfectly for me, but there's going to be a little bit of room underneath the band where it attaches to the body. The stock watch band material is a little bit stiff in my opinion, but there are going to be plenty of official as well as knockoff watch bands to choose from, and removing and installing those bands is quite literally a snap. It's going to be waterproof down to 50 meters, and one interesting thing about the Ionic is that it seems to turn off the display automatically when it's submerged, which I thought was pretty neat. The display itself is gorgeous and it's incredibly bright with a high pixel density, and it's probably one of the few displays that's actually nice enough to display a real photo without it looking like garbage. It's also going to be one of the few glossy displays to be readable in direct sunlight. Although the display is beautiful, interacting with the interface is a little bit choppy. The touchscreen is predictable and responsive, but the animations just don't keep up, unfortunately. I very much like the fact that you have 3 physical buttons along with the touchscreen display to interact with the device, as touchscreens are great for smartwatch use, but aren't so great for using the device while working out. Housed inside, you'll find a very healthy amount of sensors and connectivity, including a heart rate monitor with both green and red optical sensors, GPS, an altimeter, Wi-Fi, NFC for payments using Fitbit Pay, as well as Bluetooth, which I found to be rock solid. However, even though you can pair Bluetooth headphones, you won't be able to pair external heart rate sensors. Battery life was pretty good in smartwatch mode, and I got an average of about 4 days out of it while working out indoors a couple hours every day without using GPS nor music playback. Now, if you're listening to music that's stored on the Ionic over Bluetooth headphones, expect to drain about 4 to 5% of your battery per hour, and then using GPS consumed an additional 15% an hour. So if you are working out outside for an hour per day with music, you can expect to get maybe 2 to 3 days out of it. You'll charge the Ionic using a magnetic charging cable, but it can fall off pretty easily, and it doesn't seem to be the magnet on the cable. It seems to be the amount of magnetic material on the watch itself, as I found other pieces of steel to adhere to the cable very securely. The smartwatch experience is fairly basic with one-way notifications, and you'll be able to view pretty long messages right on the device itself, and you'll be notified with a very strong vibration that can be customized in the settings. You'll also be able to pick up a call from the device and then speak on your phone or a pair of Bluetooth headphones. You're going to get a good selection of stock watch faces to choose from, and I found these to be great, displaying tons of your daily stats. The stock app selection is pretty decent with a music app, a relax app, wallet for Fitbit Pay, timer, alarms, weather, Pandora, Starbucks, and there's even a pretty good amount of third-party apps to choose from, which I actually did see grow over the 10 or so weeks that I tested it. And don't worry, I'll talk about the Strava app after the workout stuff. Music storage and playback is a big feature of the Ionic with 2.5 gigabytes of onboard music storage for your purchase tracks, and then a Pandora app that you can use to sync your favorite radio stations if you have a premium membership. Unfortunately, even after a few months after its release, there's still no sign of a Spotify app, but hopefully that can come eventually. For daily tracking, it offers step counting, steps per hour, all-day heart rate that's measured every 5 seconds, distance, floors climbed, and active minutes. Now, steps is one of the biggest things Fitbit emphasizes as a data point for gauging activity throughout your day, and you can participate in step challenges through the broad Fitbit community. However, I found steps to be quite generous, like super rich uncle type of generous. It was consistently much higher than my daily driver as well as pretty much every other device that I tested against. It tracked actual steps properly but seemed to be a little bit too sensitive and tracked steps when no steps were actually taken. Such as this day where I went for a mountain bike ride, which can shake the watch around quite a bit, but even when it's very tight on the wrist, it tracked quite a few extra steps. Floors climbed was quite good, and on a day when I went for a mountain bike ride with 1,500 feet of elevation gain, it tracked 155 floors climbed, which roughly equates to 10 feet per floor, which is about right, excluding any other activity throughout the day. The Ionic tracks all-day heart rate every 5 seconds throughout the day while you're not working out, and I found the calorie calculations to be pretty realistic, as I find my Garmin to be a little bit generous sometimes. But regardless, I think that a lower calorie calculation is much better than something that's too high, which could give you the mistaken permission to eat an entire cake. It also comes with a red optical heart rate sensor that can be used for SpO2 measurements that could be available in future firmware updates. And then sleep tracking on a Fitbit is absolutely amazing. It provides an incredible amount of detail, and I found myself using this feature a lot. And now let's talk about those fitness features. First off, it does provide automatic workout detection, which worked well for me for walking, running, and cycling, but I wasn't able to get it to work for swimming, even going beyond the minimum threshold that you can set in your exercise settings. And then in terms of the actual fitness profiles, it provides a pretty healthy list of the most common activities to choose from. However, there are not going to be any multi-sport nor triathlon modes, at least at this time. One notable workout profile is the interval workout, where you can customize interval times on the smartphone app, which is very cool, but I'd like to see some customization from the watch itself. One disappointment is that you can only load 7 of these profiles to the watch at one time, which is kind of a bummer, and I'm not really sure why there's that limitation even with all that onboard storage. When you do go to start an actual workout on the watch, you'll have settings with options for cues with distance, time, and calories, and then there's going to be some context-sensitive options like pool lengths for swimming. Then you can customize the stats that will be displayed on the screen, you can turn GPS on or off, and then what I also found nice is that you can set the always-on display per activity. For data fields, you can have the most important metrics on the display, and then you can scroll through the secondary fields and you'll be able to customize these per activity. During an activity, you'll be able to easily access music controls by holding down the top right button. And then for running and cycling, you'll also be able to have an auto pause feature. For GPS satellite acquisition, it was a little bit slow for me, usually taking about 2 to 3 minutes to acquire, with a few occasions taking up to 5 minutes. But in all fairness, there were also a handful of occasions where it only took 30 seconds. For running in this first example, I used GPS with auto pause on, and it tracked fairly close to my daily wearable, and this is a route that I do repeatedly, so I'm pretty confident that it's right around 5K or 3.1 miles. I had to stop to tie my laces right around 1.5 miles in, and I did notice that the Ionic paused about 5 seconds later than my Garmin, and then it also took about 3 seconds to start back up, and that can probably explain some of that 20-second difference between the two, but the GPS track was solid overall. One thing I'll point out here is that it will display your splits based on the cues that you set up. So this run was set for 5-minute cues rather than cues every mile. So just make sure to check those settings if you need detailed splits. Compared to another wrist-based heart rate sensor, it did okay for average heart rate, but did experience some spikes. It will provide you with how many steps you've taken, but unfortunately does not display running dynamics like cadence nor stride length. In this next example, I turned autopause off, and it was quite close in distance, but you will see the additional time where I had to wait to cross the street, which resulted in the slower first mile split. For heart rate, it took a little while at first to pick up a higher heart rate, but overall it was okay. But again, there were a few spikes and a drop, but coincidentally, those correlated pretty closely to the other wrist-based sensor, but those anomalies did not appear with the chest heart rate strap. Running indoors was really pretty good at tracking distances straight out of the box compared to a Garmin that was already previously calibrated with a treadmill. Heart rate again was quite good for the average, but again we do see those spikes. And then here's another example where it was only a 1/2 mile off for a 5-mile run, and then heart rate was quite good compared to another wrist-based sensor, but still again had those spikes. Now, what's great about the Ionic is that you can set your stride length in the advanced account settings, and once I did this, I got an even closer result for indoor running distance. For road biking, it pretty much nailed distance compared to both another wrist-based wearable, as well as a dedicated cycling GPS computer with very little variance. And I did actually have autopause enabled for this ride, and I had to stop at a handful of stop signs and stoplights. It was very close for the average speed, but what I want to point out here is that there's some inconsistency from the watch to the app, where although I see a graph of the speed, which in my mind indicates that the max speed was right around 28 miles an hour, if we go back to the workout summary on the watch, it shows that it was 29.9 miles per hour. In addition, the watch summary shows the elevation gained, but doesn't seem to display that information on the app, unless I'm missing something. However, the elevation does seem to correlate pretty well. And then going back to heart rate, it was actually quite good at both average and max heart rate, but it was a little bit more erratic over the course of the ride compared to both an arm and chest-based heart rate sensor. And then even for longer distances, the GPS was completely accurate compared to Garmin's Edge 1030, which is their most expensive GPS cycling computer. The GPS track was completely solid over the entire course of the ride, and I never saw it veer off at all. Heart rate again was really quite good for the average, and then you'll notice that one spike, but overall it tracked the trends really quite well overall. Again, I could not seem to find the elevation in the workout summary on the smartphone app, but if we take a look at the workout summary on the watch, you'll see that it was very close to the Edge 1030. For mountain biking, again, pretty darn close to two other devices, and the GPS track was solid for the entire ride, even on the same path going out and back. It was also very good at average and max speeds, but heart rate was quite a bit farther off compared to an arm and chest heart rate strap. But in all fairness, mountain biking can really throw off a wrist-based heart rate sensor due to how jarring it can be. And then finally, for indoor cycling, the Ionic did extremely well. It nailed the average, and it even kept up with some intervals that I had at the end. The Ionic tracks swimming, but disables the heart rate sensor as well as the touchscreen, since water can make both of those act a little bit funny. You'll be able to choose a very customized pool length in both meters and yards, as well as choose manual or automatic cues. And it will also identify your stroke type, but it only seems to show up if you set up cues, and by default, my Ionic was set for cues to be off, and as you can see from the right-hand screenshot, that it didn't display the stroke type for my first test. It does automatic lap counting rather than pressing a button for a lap, and I found it to be very good, and you can even see here that I forgot to press a lap button on my other device, resulting in a missed lap. However, one drawback to the automatic lap counts is that your pace will be off per 100 yards, since it's also counting your rest time in between lengths, and consequently, it won't be able to calculate an accurate SWOLF score. Lastly, I did see on some forums that with automatic exercise detection, it'll actually collect your heart rate in the water, but since I wasn't able to get the automatic swim detection to work for me, even going beyond the 10-minute threshold, I can't verify that, but try that out for yourself and you may have better results than I had. Weight training is an activity that seems to stump most wrist-based heart rate sensors, and the Ionic was about the same. It resembled the same heart rate trend over the course of the workout, but definitely experienced a fairly healthy spike. On the stair mill, it was rock solid and produced some amazingly accurate results compared to both another wrist-based sensor as well as a chest heart rate strap. For rowing, I used the generic workout profile since it does not have a dedicated rowing profile. And just like weight training, most wrist-based heart rate sensors can really suffer in this area. But the Ionic surprisingly did okay, except for one dip and then one spike. Wrist-based sensors can go haywire with this activity, so I was incredibly impressed that it got within just a handful of beats per minute compared to two other devices. The Ionic also provides Fitbit Coach that has a handful of predefined workouts that you can follow on the watch itself. I found these to be quite good, and I may test these out alongside the new workout features that are going to be offered on the Fitbit Adidas Special Edition watch. And then finally, to close things out for fitness, let's talk about the Strava app, and this is an interesting one. With the Ionic, it's merely a way to view your workout history for activities that involve GPS. That's it. So a workout will show up here if you recorded a GPS activity using one of the built-in Fitbit workouts. However, it'll also show your Strava history of activities recorded by other devices. But the strangeness kind of doesn't stop there. It's only supposed to show GPS activities. But for some reason, it also showed a couple treadmill runs that I did with my Garmin alone where I wasn't wearing the Ionic at the time. So it's kind of odd to see which activities will show on the Strava app and which do not. So what's the verdict? Well, it's an attractive, well-built device that does its job. It has a really good smartphone app, and it's a great value at that $300 price point since it does have onboard music storage and playback. And then in regards to the fitness performance, it is very much in line with other wrist-based optical heart rate sensors, but I did experience some spikes in heart rate, which happens with other devices, but overall, I found the heart rate to be quite good and never had an occasion where it went completely off the rails. The GPS was rock solid once it acquired a signal for both short and long distances, whether they're fast or slow activities. And it's also surprisingly durable, and I'm not exactly careful with my devices, and in the many weeks of my testing, I only got one very small nick on it. So the Ionic is a very capable device, and it'll work for a lot of people, and will definitely encourage people to get more fit, no doubt. But it's a device that doesn't allow a person to bridge the gap, and let me explain what I mean here. As you increase your fitness level and capacity, you may hit a wall with this device because of its lack of running dynamics such as cadence and stride length, Swolf score with swimming, multi-sport modes, but most importantly, external heart rate support. That feature alone would allow this device to bridge that gap and not make people possibly leave the Fitbit platform for something more advanced once their fitness level becomes more advanced as well. But the great thing is, many of these things could be added with firmware updates, so I would love to see the addition of those things since the hardware really does appear to be solid. I'll be comparing the Ionic to quite a few other devices, including the new Garmin Forerunner 645 Music. So subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and while you're down there, hit that like button if you don't mind. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure to have fun with your fitness, and we will see you in the next video.